So recently I did a video about my DIY compressor, and I had a question about the different kinds of compressors, because I talked about the FET compressor, but there's actually different other categories of compressors that we use in the studio. So stick around because we're going to talk about those. So before I get into it, please like and subscribe, leave some comments below. I'd like to hear what compressors you like to use, and yeah. So basically in the studio, there are 4 kinds of compressors that we use. The first kind is what's called your FET compressor, your FET, your field effects transistor compressor. Then we have our VCA compressor, which stands for voltage control amplifier, and you'll see these all the time on consoles. It's a standard go-to compressor. Then you have your optical compressor, your opto compressor. And then finally you have your Vari-Mu, or your variable mu compressor. Mu means gain, so your variable gain compressor. Each one of these have specific jobs. They tend to be really good in certain things and not so good in other things. And I'll talk about that right now. So let's first talk about the first one that I mentioned, which is our FET compressor, our FET compressor. This is probably my main go-to compressor in the studio. It's a very versatile compressor. The one that I have here is the 1176. I'm using basically stock plugins that you can get, except for the CLA2A, which is an LA2A emulator by Waves. The BF76 I use all the time. It's fantastic. These are very useful compressors because they have a very fast attack. I tend to use these on very percussive things, or if I have to do any leveling, something that has a lot of dynamics, a really sharp transient. Basically, that's what the compressor's being activated on is that transient at the beginning. So when you hit a kick drum, for example, it creates a big transient, and that's what will trigger off your compressor. So in this case, if you have something fast, like a kick or a snare, or a slap of a bass or something, these are great compressors because they're fast enough to be able to treat that transient. Another really cool thing about this compressor is it's designed to add a lot of harmonics. You can crank that input transformer and get a lot of distortion that you could use quite a bit in your mix. So let me give you an example so you can hear what this sounds like, and we'll play with it a little bit so you can see for yourself. Another good use for this, I use this actually quite a bit for parallel compression. So parallel compression is basically when you're running your dry signal with a very compressed signal and you're blending the two together. It's neat because it can add a lot of harmonics underneath it. It's not a very transparent compressor, so it has a cool feature called all buttons in, and that's physically on the physical device you push all the buttons. If you hold shift and select the ratios on the BF76, it'll push all the buttons in so you can get that same effect. So let me show you what it sounds like. It's a pretty pumpy, gnarly sound, but it could be very useful. So the next compressor that I have queued up is going to be a VCA. So I'm using the impact compressor. VCA compressors are very useful because they have a very fast attack, so you can get those transients that require a fast attack. So again, for percussion, for bass guitar, you can use it on vocals, you can use it on quite a bit. Anything that really requires a precise dial-in of a compressor, VCAs are probably your go-to compressor for that. Another cool factor about VCAs is that they tend to be fairly transparent compared to like a FET compressor. So these are used quite a bit on master buses and mastering in general because you have that ability to be precise with a fast attack, but not totally coloring your sound. So I'm gonna use the impact compressor just to give us an idea. I think it's modeled after like an SSL G series, but let's hear it and see what it sounds like. Okay, our next category is our optical compressor or opto compressor. These ones are really cool because they use a light element to capture. So basically, the amount of light determines the amount of compression that's being applied to. Normally, they have like a fixed ratio of like 3:1, I think. I'm not totally sure on that. Leave a comment below if you know. Because we're using a filament in these compressors, there tend to be a little bit of a lag either on the release or on the attack even. So they're not known to be fast compressors, which is actually kind of cool. It kind of smooths out what we're compressing. So this kind of compressor I tend to use more on things like, again, bass guitar. Use it on like bus tracks of like a choir just to kind of give it a little bit more of the glue sound, I guess. Even on something like guitars where I don't want to have an aggressive compression or an aggressive attack, something like this can actually really bring things together quite a bit, which is really nice. Another cool thing with this compressor, I'm using the CLA2A, and now there's also one, I think BF2A is available as a stock plugin in Pro Tools. This is emulating a tube compressor, so it adds some harmonics to the mix, which is really kind of cool. So let's just hear what it sounds like with the drums and just kind of get an idea of what's happening with the optical compressor. Okay, so this brings me to my fourth compressor, which is the Vari-Mu compressor, the variable mu compressor. This compressor is really neat because it's using tube technology to control the gain reduction. There's no set ratio or attack or anything like that in this compressor. Basically, what goes in will determine on how much it's compressing. That's about as much as I can tell you about this type of compressor in the circuitry. Because we're using tubes, there's gonna be a lot of that harmonic distortion added to the signal. So it's a very colorful compressor. A lot of people talk about this as the musical compressor. You'll see this compressor quite a bit used on master buses or on audio that doesn't require a lot of transient treatment, basically. A lot of times I'll actually use it on vocals too to smooth it out, and it adds quite a bit to it. I've used it on bass guitar in the past as well, which turned out pretty cool. It's a very unique compressor. It's one of those ones that everybody kind of has their own kind of place for it. But anyways, let me show you what it sounds like, and just to give you a sense of what it does. Okay, so there you have it. Those are the 4 types of compressors that we use in the studio. So I hope this video helped. Like I said, leave comments below if there's anything else you want to learn about this. There's tons and tons of stuff. This isn't really a lesson on how to use a compressor. This is just kind of an overview of the types of compressors that we use in the studio. So thank you very much. Hope this is helpful, and I will talk to you soon. See ya.